Good evening everybody. I am going to discuss with you about natural language processing. What do you mean by natural language processing? And what are all the different types of NLP techniques? Today I am going to discuss with you about natural language processing. Basically, what do you mean by this natural language processing? So similar to English language, NLP, so artificial intelligence, data science, machine learning, all these technologies are growing at a very fast rate. What do you mean by this artificial intelligence? So what do you mean by this NLP technique? It is nothing but yes, good evening everybody. Am I audible? Kishore Kumar, good evening. Vardhan, good evening. Am I audible? Am I audible to everyone? Yes. Today I am going to discuss with you about natural language processing. What do you mean by this term natural language processing? It is similar to processing. So how the English language is being processed, the speech, it is going to capture the speech input of humans. We are going to process the text and we are going to get some important result. Yes. So this is what is called as natural language processing. This type of technology, natural language processing, this is growing at a very fast rate. So what are all the different types of inputs and outputs? We are going to capture the speech input of humans. We are going to process them and we are going to give the corresponding output. For example, you can consider chatbot applications, medical inquiry chatbots, college inquiry chatbots. All these are important applications of this NLP, natural language processing. What do you mean by this medical inquiry chatbots? For example, in a hospital, based on the symptoms given by the patient, the chatbot, it is going to capture the speech input and we are going to get the corresponding output. So this is one important application of NLP. And university chatbots. For example, in a university college, you can take. So what are all the important applications of this chatbots? It is going to capture, for example, what are all the different events that are happening in the college based on the inputs given by humans. So for example, I need to know, so all these are the different types of events that are happening in the college or the university. So based on all these, so whatever input it is going to capture, the chatbot, it is going to process and we are going to get the corresponding result. Clear? So this is, all these are examples of NLP, natural language processing. So I just gave an introduction to this technology. What do you mean by this natural language processing? And I am going to discuss with you about two important components. What are all the important components involved in NLP? The first one is the natural language understanding. So what do you mean by this natural language understanding and natural language generation? What do you mean by natural language understanding? So it involves the following task. For example, whatever is the given input in natural language, I am going to analyze the different aspects of the language. First, I should understand the meaning hidden behind the data. So natural language understanding. For example, in case of medical inquiry chatbots, I am going to capture the symptoms given by the patients and I am going to understand. So it involves these two important components. These two are the major components in NLP. Natural language understanding and natural language generation. This is one more important component of NLP. What do you mean by this natural language generation? So it involves the process of producing meaningful phrases and sentences in the form of natural language. So how I am going to capture the speech input of humans, how I am going to process the speech input, and I am going to produce some important results. In case of natural language generation, it involves the following. For example, text planning, sentence planning, and then text realization. What do you mean by this text planning, natural language generation? So all these are the important components of NLP, natural language processing. The first step is the natural language understanding. I am going to analyze the different aspects of the language. So whatever is the given input, speech input, I am going to analyze the different aspects of the language. And then the next part comes the natural language generation. For example, text planning. So I am going to retrieve the useful content from the knowledge base. And then sentence planning. So all these are the three different steps involved in natural language generation. What do you mean by text planning? What do you mean by sentence planning? And the next important step is the text realization. What do you mean by this text planning? So I am going to retrieve the useful content from the knowledge base. After to text planning is the next comes the sentence planning. I am going to choose the required words. I am going to form some meaningful phrases, and it sets the tone of the given sentence. And the third step is the text realization. It maps the sentence plan into the corresponding sentence structure. All these are the important components of NLP, natural language processing. The first major component is the natural language understanding, and the second major component is the natural language generation. So it involves these three steps. The first step is the text planning. The second step is the sentence planning. And the third step is the text realization. So I am going to map the sentence plan into the sentence structure. What are all the important terminologies you should understand in NLP, natural language processing? Firstly, you should understand what do you mean by phonology, what do you mean by morphology. So all these are the important terms. So how I am going to capture the speech input of humans. I am going to process the input. So I am going to make some textual analysis, and I am going to get some meaningful result. This is the major concept of NLP, natural language processing. What are all the important terminologies of NLP, natural language processing? The first step is phonology. So the phonetics, for example, whatever words the people are speaking, it is nothing but the study of organizing sound systematically. The next important term you should understand in NLP is the morphology. So what do you mean by this morphology? It is the study of construction of words from some primitive meaningful units. How I am going to construct some words from primitive units, smaller units. And the next term is the syntax. So what do you mean by this syntax? The words are arranged in some specific order in order to make a meaningful sentence. And semantics. It is concerned with the meaning of words and how to combine the words into some meaningful phrases and sentences. So all these are the important terms you should understand in NLP, natural language processing. And pragmatic. So what do you mean by pragmatic? So whenever I am speaking of NLP, natural language processing, so practically you should understand. So all these are the different terms that are involved in NLP. So how I am going to capture the speech input of humans, how I am going to process the text, and I am going to get some important result, pragmatics. Clear? So all these are the different terminologies. And discourse. So this is one more important term. So how I am going to get the meaningful, how I am going to interpret the sentence? I am going to capture the speech input of humans, and how I am going to interpret. So based on the previous sentence, how it can affect my next sentence. So it deals with the term discourse. So all these these are the important terminologies involved in NLP, natural language processing. The first term is the phonetics, phonology. So how to understand, it is nothing but the study of organizing sound systematically. And the next important term is the morphology. It is nothing but the study of construction of words from some primitive meaningful units. And what do you mean by syntax? Whenever I am considering any sentence, the words should be organized in some specific order in order to make a meaningful sentence. And semantics. So how to combine words into meaningful phrases and sentences. Pragmatic. So how to understand based on context or different situations, I am going to understand the meaning of my sentence. All these are the important terms you should understand in NLP, natural language processing. Clear? So what are all the important terminologies? Firstly, I just discussed with you about the components of NLP. So what are all the two main components of NLP? Next, I just gave an introduction to NLP terminologies. What are all the different terminologies, terms involved in NLP, natural language processing? Next, I am going to discuss with you about the steps involved. For example, how I am going to analyze, capture the speech input of humans. How I am going to analyze, make some analysis step by step. What are all the different steps involved in my analysis? And I am going to come up with the prediction result. So I am going to analyze the meaning of my sentence and I am going to get some important prediction result. The first step is the lexical analysis. What do you mean by this lexical analysis? It is used to identify and analyze the structure of words. Lexicon. So what do you mean by the term lexicon? It is nothing but the collection of words and phrases in the language. This is what is done in lexical analysis, lexicon. And the next step involved in NLP is syntactic analysis. What do you mean by syntax? The words in the sentence are analyzed for some grammar. So syntactically, how the words are arranged in such a manner that it shows the relationship between the words. So syntactic analysis. So how I am going to understand this? I am going to capture the speech input of humans and how I am going to analyze the text and I am going to come up with some important solution. So how the chatbot, it is going to capture the speech input. It's going to process the textual information and I am going to get some important result. All these are the different steps involved in NLP, natural language processing. The second step is the syntactic analysis and the third step is the semantic analysis. What do you mean by semantics? So I am going to map, for example, it shows the correct meaning from my text, semantics, order of my words in a sentence. And discourse integration. So as I told you, right, what do you mean by this discourse integration? So step by step I am going to analyze. I am going to capture the speech input of humans. I am going to analyze textual information. I am going to analyze and I am going to come up with some important prediction result. Discourse integration. Alright. So based on the previous sentence, I am going to predict what is going to happen in the future. And pragmatic analysis. What do you mean by pragmatics? So what was said is reinterpreted on what is actually meant. So all these are the different steps involved in natural language processing. So how, as I told you, right, what do you mean by natural language processing? It is similar to processing of English language. I am going to capture the speech input of humans. I am going to analyze the textual information. I am going to process the text. And I am going to come up with some important solution. So all these are the different steps involved in NLP, natural language processing. The first step is the lexical analysis. I am going to analyze the structure of words. Alright. The next step is the syntactic analysis. The words in the sentence are analyzed analyze for some grammar. Syntactically, it shows the relationship between the words. And semantic analysis. So it shows the correct meaning from the text. So semantics, I have to understand the meaning of my sentence. After structuring, so I am going to analyze, I am going to check for some grammar. If there are some wrong grammatical words that are involved, so I should ignore all those unwanted words. And the next step is the semantic analysis. It shows the correct meaning from the text. I have to understand the meaning of my sentence. Semantic analysis and discourse integration. Alright. So all these are the important things you should understand. So whenever I am going to consider NLP, natural language processing, all these are the important terms you should understand. Next I am going to discuss with you about the NLTK, Natural Language Toolkit Package. What do you mean by this NLTK, Natural Language Toolkit Library or Module? For doing different types of applications, for example, if I want to do some visual analysis, there are some different types of libraries. And if I want to perform some data manipulation task, I can go for different types of libraries. For example, Pandas library, it is used for performing any kind of data manipulation task. And there is one more important library called NumPy library. NumPy stands for Numerical Python. It is used for performing any kind of mathematical operations. Alright. In order to use any of the modules or libraries, first I need to install the corresponding modules or libraries. Pip is the corresponding package installer. Pip space install space I have to give the corresponding module name. For example, NLTK, Natural Language Toolkit Module. Alright. For example, if you want to install any module or library, you can just go to the environments terminal, base root option, right click, there is an open terminal option, just give the pip command, pip install, I have to give the corresponding module name, for example NLTK, Natural Language Toolkit Module or Library. Alright. So after installing the corresponding module or library, you can use any of the functionalities available in this NLTK library. Alright. With this, I am just stopping today. I just gave an introduction to NLP. What do you mean by natural language processing? What are all the important components of NLP? And steps involved in natural language processing. Alright. I hope I am clear with my topics. And there is a Java full stack masterclass program. It is going to start from 1st of September and it is going to end by 30th of September. So it is a full stack masterclass program. Alright. If you are interested, you can just join this masterclass program. Every day the classes will be conducted live in the YouTube channel from 6 to 6:45 in the evening. And this is our learning agenda. Firstly, I will be discussing about Java language. What do you mean by identifiers, data types, comments, loops, what are all the different types of loops, decision making statements, operators. For the first 10 days, I will just cover the core Java concepts and then I will give you an introduction to HTML. What do you mean by HTML? Hypertext Markup Language. And what are all the different types of attributes, headings, colors. And then I will be discussing with you about servlets. What is the use of servlets and SQL. So after discussing with you about servlets, I will be discussing how to interact with the database, structured query language, and how to connect Java with the database. I will be discussing with you about JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. And finally, I will be discussing some applications of Java. So, how to develop some websites using this Java and SQL. Alright. So, if you are interested, you can just join in this full stack masterclass program. The class is going to start from 1st of September and it will end by 30th of September. Once you attend this masterclass for 30 days, you will be receiving a free webinar certificate. You can just include this certificate in your resume and you can become a full stack Java developer if you attend this masterclass for 30 days. Alright. Any doubts? Alright. Remaining things we will see tomorrow. Thank you all.